We are police. So no lies between us. He wasn't the greatest detective. And he wasn't the worst. He put down some good cases and he dogged a few bad ones. But the motherfucker had his moments. Yes, he fucking did. Did he say the wrong shit now and then? Did he bust balls and cheat on his taxes and forget to call his mother and fuck the wrong broad for the wrong fucking reason every now and then? His shit was as weak as ours, no question. But Ray Cole stood with us. All of us. In Baltimore. Working. Sharing a dark corner of the American experiment. He was called. He served. He is counted.
The Cadillac stood by the house and the Yanks they were within. And the Tinker boys they hissed advice but were with a pen. Well, we turned and shook as we had a look in a room where the dead man lay. So big Jim Dwyer made his last trip to the shores where his fathers lay. But 15 minutes later we had our first taste of whiskey. There was uncles giving lectures on ancient Irish history. The men all started telling jokes and the women they got frisky. By 5 o'clock in the evening every bastard there was pesky. Pretty well gone away, there's nothing left to say. Farewell to New York City boys, to Boston and PA. He took them out with a well-known clout and I often heard him say, I'm a free-born man of the USA. I'm a free-born man of the USA. I'm a free-born man of the U.
Welcome to From the Mezzanine, a film podcast. I'm Matt and that is Chuck and this is episode 73. Today we'll be reviewing the second and possibly last installment in the Shazam series. It's a film that's in conflict, stuck between the early superhero films of the 2000s and modern standards for the genre, and also in the middle of the DCEU that was and James Gunn's DCU that will be. We'll talk more about that later. First, we're going to be discussing all the news of the week. We'll go over what else we've been watching. We'll close out the show with the mentionable, the pick of the week. We got everyone's favorite segment here. But first, before we begin in earnest, there's a bit of an announcement that needs to be made regarding the future of this show and this channel. We're going to spend probably the next 5 to 10 minutes on this announcement. So Chuck and I are going to give two versions of it. The first is going to be a sort of TLDR version, which contains only the necessary information for anybody who watches that just wants the bullet points and then wants to move on with the rest of the show using the timestamps. The second version is going to be a longer, more fully transparent telling of the same information, mostly so we can explain ourselves a little bit more. So here's the abridged version. Essentially, another podcast has stolen our name, and because of this, we're going to be changing the name of our show and this channel. Other than the name, the content of the show is going to stay exactly the same. Sometime during this next week that's coming up, you're going to see a new channel in your subscriptions, but that's just us. For people that aren't subscribed currently and watch this show, I'm going to recommend that you either subscribe or you go back and look in your watch history, or else you're probably not going to be able to find us because we're not quite ready to reveal our new name. So that's the vital information. Feel free to move on with the rest of the show if you choose. Otherwise, Chuck's going to take it from here and kind of explain how we found ourselves in this situation.
Yeah. So it starts back, in October of 2021 when, we first were talking about doing this, and we were noodling on a name, and I proposed, what about Mezzanine? And you were like, well, what about From the Mezzanine? Because there was some other shows called just Mezzanine, and there was a bunch of songs called Mezzanine and things like that. You know, and it's a word, you know, but we decided to, run with the name that we've had, for our whole lifetime of the show. And we were recently rolling out, a audio only version of the show. So I was readying, my knowledge for that process. I was figuring out which service are we going to use to host us, which platforms do we want to be on, how do you even fucking do that? We're hobbyists. This isn't something I'm doing full time. I don't have some coterie of, Gen Z social media experts, behind the scenes producing everything for me. This is just something we do in our spare time. We watch shit and then we convene once a week. And so we were going to work within our workflow, keep it reasonable. I had found a quick and easy way to convert this, live stream version of the show into an audio only podcast equivalent. And then as I was, basking in my ingenuity at figuring it all out, I got, Matt messaged me because he discovered that this other show was in existence, and we're going to work very hard to not be vindictive cunts about it. Because, we're not going to say who this individual is, anything identifying about them. But, needless to say, They took the name and added a unique modifier of their own at the end. If you're a talented enough Google sleuth, you'll be able to know who this other show is. But we are not going to dox them, and we don't want anyone to go bug them. Because from what we can tell, they are just really, really young and don't realize how shitty they're being. Because we did attempt to communicate with them. We did try to put our best foot forward and be like, hey, heads up, maybe you don't know about us. But I don't really find the reply from them that they just didn't know that we were existing here on YouTube in this space, or that we had a Facebook page or anything like that. They just kind of, felt like, well, we're just going to be on every other platform. We're going to crush you with the SEO, in search engines. Because when you Google From the Mezzanine now, you find them instead of us. And, that's really the part of the problem here. There's, now there's ambiguity about who is using the name and what you're clicking on when you're looking for it. And now people can't find us unless you just go on YouTube and look for us. But, that's a pretty limited ecosystem compared to the whole wide internet that you could get from being on Amazon or, Apple Music, for example. And in our communications with them, they made it very clear that they felt that it was, no big deal. In fact, we aren't really a podcast just because they don't think we are, which is an argument that I don't think they could win, but I just don't have the fucking energy to try to win. At this point in my life, I work, full time. I have a family. Matt obviously has the same situation too. And we also like to do things for fun. And going on a great crusade to try and, claim what we believe is rightfully ours, well, righteous, and certainly, something I personally would have been totally down for when I was like 20, 3 versus 33. And that's kind of where we were at. It just kind of became apparent that we weren't going to be able to reach them, and we were not going to get beyond this in a reasonable way. And we weren't willing to, take the pound of flesh it would take to, win it. We barely spend any money on this endeavor. It's basically just a tax write-off for me anyway. Hello, Uncle Sam. And, we're not making money on this, but if it would ever be something that we would do or they would do, both of us trying to coexist would not be tenable, and it would not work. And we're heading towards some kind of self-destructive confrontation, no matter how you slice it. And because we're more mature, we're more willing to do what they would not do, which is, grow, move beyond, everything we had built, and try and find something, not just a silver lining, but just like, what is the next stage of what we're doing here? Because let's be honest, the early episodes From the Mezzanine, a little rough, not only in our delivery, like we were still like, I hadn't been on a camera in like 10 years before we, you started doing this. I don't know if you ever had any experience being in a live, recording environment like this. So yeah, it took a little bit for us to get our footing, and I really like, you know, where the show is at now. I don't want it to die just because of, you know, some, you know, I'm just gonna say it, some like really vocal fried out theater kid. But you know, there's more to life than all of this. So sometime in the future, you know, very near future, within like the next week, a Mandela effect will occur, like Matt alluded to. And suddenly it won't be us, you know, as you know us, but it will be us as we, you know, are going forward. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm not as worked off as I was when this was first discovered. It was a very rude birthday present, let me tell you. I was not happy with it. And it took a lot of thinking. And, you know, in conversation with you, I know that Angie really just, you know, wants us to tell this individual to fuck off. And that was an option. But I think there's more positivity in this other decision versus the destruction that would surely follow if we went to the mattresses. But without, you know, belaboring the point, I think that kind of covers it. Was there anything I forgot to mention?
No, I don't think so. I guess the only other thing would be, this isn't something we've fully decided on yet, but we might be also changing the day that we upload our videos.
Yeah.
So look out for that too. We're probably going to change to sometime in the early work week would be my guess, if we did that. But that's something that we're still kind of noodling on. But otherwise, yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. So yeah, just to reiterate, our name will be changing, our channel name will be changing, and you're going to see that sometime here in the next week.
So, like and subscribe now, hit that bell, all that jazz that annoying YouTuber people say. Because then at the very least, you could see familiar faces appearing in your you know, feeds and recommendeds. You'll get a notification letting you know that the new show has uploaded. And yeah, we'll probably be making a separate individual video out of this clip so it can be more easily, you know, put into the hands of everybody. But that is what's going on. Suddenly, you'll wake up and From the Mezzanine will be gone off of YouTube. But something else will be growing and expanding on every platform because, you know, fuck all of these bitches. And speaking of the most fucking... This was awful. This was the most awful thing to see in my news feed yesterday. But Lance Reddick, the great actor, has passed away from natural causes. The Baltimore, Maryland native and star of, you know, many a TV show, a prolific voice actor, and most recently going to appear in John Wick 4. This is beyond heartbreaking. It's just as bad as Michael K. Williams, if not worse, because I thought this man was black, never gonna crack. You know, this man defined black excellence. He just looked like he was gonna live forever. The man was carved out of ebony. And yeah, this is just a bummer.
Yeah, it's he's the thing that struck me when I was kind of just researching stuff yesterday for this story is just how prolific he was. And I think he has 114 credits to his name, and we're still gonna see him in like 5 or 6 things in the coming year.
Wow.
And, like you said, including John Wick Chapter 4, and then the spin-off, The Ballerina. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great that we're gonna still see some stuff out of him, but yeah, it's such like a tragedy. He brought so much like gravitas to his roles. In The Wire, I mean, probably his most famous role, he was essentially the straight man, and that's a hard job to do when you're going up against, you know, larger than life characters like McNulty and Omar. But he did it so well, and he was still just as memorable. Like, he's one of the characters you think of when you think of that show. Mm-hmm. And I want to give a shout out specifically to also his video game roles, because he was in a lot of games, probably most notably the PlayStation Horizon series, Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, as Silence, the sort of overarching villain of the series. it's a shame that we're not going to see him in the conclusion to that game series trilogy. But yeah, he was in a lot of games. I think he's also in Destiny 2 as a villain, I believe. I don't know for sure who he plays because I don't play that game. But yeah, he jumped around to TV, to film, to video games. He was so prolific, and he was always memorable. His voice was memorable. Just a big loss.
Yeah, a commanding presence, and by all accounts, a wonderful human being. You had included a wonderful image from an interview talking about how Keanu Reeves stopped by on his birthday to the set on a day he wasn't supposed to, just because he wanted to hang out, quote, wanted to hang out with Lance. And it was just a very touching thing for Reddick to experience. And it just is just more evidence of the propaganda movement for wholesome Keanu to take precedence in our minds. This is just another reminder that he's a wonderful human being. But all at the same time, salute you, sir. I hope that we don't get ban-hammered for that intro. But happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone, if you're watching hungover this morning. But it just felt right to give the man a Baltimore murder police funeral on the felt, as it were, in my small way, as far as my horrible After Effects skills can produce. I broke that intro so many times, dude. I don't know what the fuck. After Effects? Fuck you. I may never use you again after this. But let me tell you, there's some people over on Reddit that are in fucking trouble, man. Because Marvel is shaking down the front page of the internet. They're like, hey, somebody leaked the script to our middling superhero movie on your website like 3 weeks in advance, and we want to know who they are, motherfucker. And Reddit, supposedly, a supporter of civil liberties and all that jazz, is like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that. Yeah, we don't give up user data, even though that's what their business is. They're always selling your data. But they really want to go put the screws to whoever this fan was. And it's, I guess it's up in the air if they're actually going to do it. But, why are they doing it for this movie? Why are they going to, fucking war because of this?
That was exactly the question I was going to ask to start this too. But I'll say, I think that, because, if people will remember, much, much more substantial things from Marvel movies have leaked online than a script. I remember before Infinity War came out, 2 weeks before that movie came out, the entire scene of Thanos killing Vision was online. That entire sequence was online. And stuff like this always happens with Marvel movies, whether it's video clips, screenshots, pictures of the toys for the movie, so you can see what the characters are going to look like. Everything always leaks with Marvel movies. And so why this one in particular, and why for something as lame as just a script? And I think it's because Marvel knows that their movies are getting worse. They know that the quality isn't quite up to the par it used to be. And they see a future where stuff like this getting leaked will significantly affect their bottom dollar, where people will see this stuff and just be like, oh, this script is awful, or this, which it was. The script for this movie was awful. And so people are going to see this and not go to the movies because they no longer are making very good movies. I haven't enjoyed one of these, I don't think, since Spider-Man, the last Spider-Man. And before that, I can't even tell you, Endgame, I guess. And so they're gonna come down hard from now on, I think, with stuff like this.
Considering how middling the competition is presently, I don't think they should worry so much. But I guess we'll see what James Gunn actually does once he's in control. I'm burying the lead about what I'm about to say about the main review, but we'll get to that. Yeah, I think you're right. They are just seeing the writing on the wall. Iger probably is as well. So it's all about damage control, and how do you protect the integrity of your opening weekend. That's all that matters. And they already do such a good job of controlling the narrative around, the hype surrounding their content, They got all those little like worker elves, in social media, all those influencers that will just go, whoa, about everything. And they can't keep that charade up if they put out crap, or if people can determine it's crap before they've had a chance to hear the propaganda. So this is probably just going to get even more, heavy-handed. Like, I think we're going to start, how like in the early days of internet piracy, people were getting like multi-million-dollar lawsuits for downloading like a song off of Napster. I think it's going to kind of go in that direction. But really, the whole problem is their own employees. Who the fuck is leaking this shit? Like it's the people. Well, it's internal, is it not?
It's not. It's actually it's from a contract company, I think, is what they assume, is that because what leaked online, it was a script with the English script and then like Portuguese translation. So they think it was from like a company that does dubs or subs for these movies. And yeah, so I think it's probably like a contractor somewhere in, I don't know, Brazil or something. But
that's funny.
It's nuts. I before we jump off this story, I just want to say like how ridiculous this whole premise is in and of itself, because when you really look at this, the actual like copyrighted material is being held in a Google Doc on Google. And Disney is going after Reddit solely for sharing the link to that Google Doc. They're not hosting the script at all. Ooh. And so it's patently ridiculous that Disney is even going after them for this. And then on top of that, they're asking for all this personal information. And I guess that the username that shared this stuff on the Marvel Movie Leaks subreddit is used by like multiple people, because it's like a moderator username.
Yeah.
So yeah, like essentially Disney is asking for, potentially, I don't know, 5-10 people's personal information based off of the actions of one person. And so it's absolutely ridiculous.
Super, super ridiculous. Wow. Thank you for digging into that, because those are important distinctions. If it's a Google Drive derived file, then the only way it gets viewed is because you have given permission to the person to see it, or it's like direct link. So if you have the link, you can see it. Because you can constrain it so only specific Google accounts can look at it. And what's amazing is that they didn't do that. They're running this like a bunch of college students on a group project. You know what I mean? Where it's a free for all, and it's like, oh, the link gets out. Well, of course it's gonna happen. You have no firewall of integrity, to compartmentalize this kind of thing from getting out. I don't know. They deserve it. Basically, when you know that Disney themselves harvest data and are getting all uppity about this, I have no sympathy for them.
Yeah, same.
We also got some news that he's been talking about it for like 10 years, but it's happening now. Our good friend Quentin Tarantino is officially getting ready to roll out his final film, which is going to be called The Movie Critic, and presumably will explore the life and career of Pauline Kael, or is this just going to be a gonzo Tarantino movie that just happens to have that archetype at its center?
I think it's probably the latter. I would imagine that Tarantino is going to use this woman's real life as like a jumping off point, kind of like he used the Manson murders in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as sort of a jumping off point for that movie, and then just went in so many different directions. And I think it's going to be the same for this one.
Right on. So no studios attached. He is just basically saying, Hollywood, get ready. All of you actors who want to work with me, start buttering me up. That's kind of the stage we're at. It's the Jamie Foxx goes to parties with QT part of the relationship, where they're just trying to get the vibe going.
Uh-huh. Yeah, let me ask you this. Do you think, there's a lot of hubbub about this. solely because of the fact that it's supposedly his last movie.
Yeah.
And he has, said in the past that he wants to retire when he turns 60 and he wants to retire on his 10th film. Do you think he's going to make good on this, or do you think that it's all just kind of blowing smoke?
I think it's just blowing smoke. I mean,
Okay.
like, because that's the thing. He has couched it he's retiring from film. He's retiring from cinema. He has all these other fucking things he'd love to do, whether it's writing books or film criticism, essays, whatever, or even like you're doing graphic novels or television, like limited series and things like that. He's open to doing that kind of shit. Hell, if they actually let him make his Star Trek movie, he would leave retirement to do that. So I think it's just we all know how Steven Soderbergh retired on us, and we all know how that was bullshit. Like, the man literally retired and then made Magic Mike. Mm-hmm. If I'm remembering his timeline correctly. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. But like that whole trilogy of films, a whole franchise was done in retirement. So I don't know. I think Quentin more than likely is going to get bored if he doesn't have a creative, crusade to go on. Basically, if he doesn't have something to get rolling, some big, apparatus to turn on and get people to jump on board with. Because, just hanging out and watching movies in your mansion, and I guess he has a family now. That is different. I had forgotten. Did you know he has 2 kids?
Yeah. They're still pretty young too, from what I understand. He had kids very late in life.
Oh yeah. Because it was like back in the 90s, I remember him on Charlie Rose talking about being with Mira Sorvino in a relationship with her and having baby fever, but then it just never works out. He talks himself out of it because he just wants to make the next movie. So maybe I take that, I kind of maybe he is going to actually retire. He's got kids now. I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of go back to the subject of the movie for a second, if people don't know, Pauline Kael is a film critic who was active, I think, from the late 60s to about 1991 is when she retired. And she worked for the New Yorker for the most part. And she was known kind of for her extremely divisive takes where she either hated something or loved it. And oftentimes she was kind of the Armand White of her time, where her opinions, they generally conflicted with all of her peers. And but she was very good at justifying herself. So that's she was very well respected. And Tarantino obviously has reverence for her. But to go back to the woman herself, any sort of ideas as to who Tarantino will cast as her? Because this puts, he likes to work with the same people. That's the problem with Tarantino. He loves to work with the same actors, but he also just as much loves to work with new actors. So the time frame in which this movie is set puts her at about 51 to 60 years old is how old she would be. So did you have any casting that you think he might do for the lead role?
I don't know. We're talking middle-aged woman, you know? Meryl Streep?
I can see the resemblance.
Or a lot of the women I'm thinking of are too old, like Charlotte Rampling and Helen Mirren. But who could probably do a good job? I can't think of her name, but she's that character actress who was in Hereditary and was it Mass, that school shooting movie about the parents in the basement?
Ann Dowd.
Maybe she'd be an interesting choice.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I would say, just strictly going off of people that Tarantino has worked with before and likes to work with.
Yeah.
I would say this would be the perfect role for the Hateful Eight's Jennifer Jason Leigh.
That's the thing. I was not thinking about people he had worked with, but that's perfect. I like that. Because, she just has the vibe, I would say, just from what was she in LA based, or she worked for the New Yorker, so she'd probably have to be a New York based critic.
She was for the majority of her life, but she actually Again, this goes back to the LA setting. She worked for Paramount for about a year in 1971 in LA. And that really, I guess from what I understand, that really, really didn't work out. Like, she hated it there, and they didn't like her there either. And so she went back to being a film critic.
So that's what this movie is about, isn't it? It's about that. So it's all going to be studio hijinks, LA bullshittery, and it's going to be about a movie critic realizing, I just need to go back to being a movie critic because this industry is awful. Okay. But my question is, like, how is it going to get gonzo? Like, where are the hijinks really going to come from this narrative? Like what is he going to have to cook up to make this work?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that he'll kind of delve into the realm of sort of magical realism that he sometimes does, or alternate histories like he did with Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
And so I think that he'll probably take that route with it. Either that, or he's just going to make his version of Babylon,
which will be disappointing. But
yeah,
I don't know. I'm a little worried about this the more I consider it, because what do all those other movies that you mentioned had? They had real good hooks. This movie has hooks for the right person, like you Brad Pitt carving up Nazis and killing Hitler. Yeah, everyone wants to see that. Like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio in a really expensive period piece by Tarantino about the Manson murders. Okay, yeah, that's a really good hook. Pauline Kael. I guess it's cool, but I get where he's coming from. I just worry that, his final film might be, not as successful as, he maybe hopes, or that we expect him to be. Because I guess, I don't know, do you ever go into a Tarantino movie and worry that you're going to get a dog?
I used to, but I don't know if it's really justified to, because it always seems like he comes out on top. Like I always, of course there's good ones and there's better ones as far as Tarantino's concerned. But they're always entertaining. They're always fun to watch. And I mean, if this is truly the end, then what a career. I mean, absolutely like unparalleled. Like I don't think you could call any of his movies like absolute disasters in any way. And so he's leaving the industry with like a batting 300 or whatever.
He's basically batting 1,000. If the metric is, would I change the channel if I saw that one of his movies was on like a TV station or something? Probably not. Even Death Proof, I would watch just for the novelty of it. And you can't say that about anybody, but he's talked about it before, but the man is deeply concerned about legacy, even when he was like only 3 movies into his career, which is, pretty, nuts, but you can tell that he's been very careful throughout. Mm-hmm. Someone who has not been careful and has, actually been kind of a bull in the china shop is our muscly friend Zack Snyder. And he's been up to some shit on Twitter. I haven't been paying attention, but what the fuck is this, man? Like, all of your allies are gone from Warner Brothers. They want nothing to do with you. What could he possibly be teasing?
Yeah, it's interesting because if people haven't watched this, well, you're playing it right now, but there's a narration, presumably by a Darkseid, the DC character or the DC villain Darkseid, a voice actor who's playing Darkseid, and they give a date of a span of 3 days. And my first instinct was, okay, so that's obviously when whatever this thing is going to be fully revealed. So I immediately went online and searched for comic conventions happening on those dates. And what I found was the biggest comic convention that's happening in that time frame is Calgary Expo, which is Canada's, I think, second biggest comic convention. So I think if he wanted to announce something there, he totally could. It's a pretty huge convention from what I understand. And But otherwise, my only other thought with this is maybe Warner Brothers and DC are expanding their DC Fandom event, because if people will remember, DC has done this thing called Fandom for the past couple of years, where it's basically an online, it's essentially like a Nintendo Direct or a PlayStation State of Play, but for Warner Brothers or with DC stuff. And so maybe they're extending that to 3 days instead of 1, but I think that's probably less likely.
Yeah, especially for him, because he's a Netflix guy now, and he totally, with all of the Snyder Cut nonsense and their internal investigations, I just don't understand how they could ever consider working with him again, especially on anything DC related. So is he just being a troll? Is this just about Rebel Moon?
Oh god, that would be hilarious. But I mean, I really don't think so. I think this is real because, it explicitly says dark side in the message.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And,
like, you'd think he'd get gutted for that.
He totally would. They would send him, like a cease and desist or a copyright strike or something. And I think this is legit. But the question is what it is teasing. And when it comes to that, I don't think they're ever going to give Zack Snyder, or Warner Brothers is ever going to give Zack Snyder a movie budget ever again. And so what I think this is probably teasing is either a animated film that is going to finish what his movies would have been, or B, a comic book series doing the same thing.
And that's the thing. That little video has like early 2010s Kickstarter comic book trailer energy. That's the vibe I'm getting from that. So I think you're maybe right that it is more along the lines of another like peace offering from them to just to get him the fuck out of their hair and get the fans away from him. Even though they run the risk of just giving them more ammunition. Because if the graphic novel is good or like the animated version of it is awesome, they're just going to demand that the thing be real. However, have you heard the interview from Ben Affleck where he basically was like, oh no, I fucking loved what we did with Batman.
Yeah.
I loved Batman vs. Superman. That movie was good. I was really proud of that. Like, what do we make of that? Like, is there something happening that we aren't aware of? Are they going to pull a major mindfuck and just be like, oh yeah, and by the way, Snyderverse is also going to be a thing we're doing? Why not? Yeah. Just have two, have two different things happening at the same time. What if they did that? I would die. I can't,
yeah, I am more warm to that idea now than I was like a week ago because of this, and then also because of, did you hear about the Tom Cruise's screening of The Flash?
No. Oh my god.
Tom Cruise was meeting with David Zaslav this week, and Tom Cruise asked if he could see The Flash, if he could watch The Flash, and Zaslav let him. And apparently Tom Cruise cold called Andy Muschietti, the director of The Flash, and just called him up out of the blue. He's never talked to the guy before, and just said, man, I love that movie. That was the best superhero movie I've ever seen. We need more movies like this. And basically just like fanboyed to Andy Muschietti for, a couple minutes over the phone about it.
So, is Tom Cruise joining the DCU?
Yeah, I mean, why was he meeting with Zaslav? You wonder that in the first place. So, yeah, maybe.
Who could he possibly be?
Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, that's something I'd probably have to think more about. But
Tom Cruise, Bruce Wayne, old man Bruce Wayne. God. It's gonna happen.
Well, I think Keaton has that covered, but
I suppose that's true. It's a little redundant, yeah.
But I mean, I guess we'll see, because that's entirely in the realm of possibility. He's never been, people have said for years Tom Cruise is going to show up as an alternate history or alternate universe Tony Stark in the Marvel movies, but he has yet to be in a Marvel movie as Tony Stark or otherwise. And so yeah, maybe DC got to him first, and maybe he is a bigger DC fan than a Marvel fan, and so I guess we'll kind of see.
Wow, this news item had a lot more going on in it than I thought it would. That's holy shit. Like I'm kind of reeling a little bit, because I'll tell you, what else left me reeling, man? It was After Effects being a complete cunt last night. I will admit that. I spent as much time working on that intro as I typically do our entire graphics for an average show. That's how miserable it was. But it kept me awake long enough to watch 4 episodes of Donald Glover's new Amazon Prime series, Swarm. Holy fuck. That's all I got to say to start out. Yeah. What do you got to say to start?
Well, I guess if people don't know, the Donald Glover's new Amazon series
I got to do her makeup.
I think
I
was
wouldn't be able to touch her face. My hands
to
would be
me
shaking
as being about essentially a Beyonce analog in this show's universe,
from that old ass
and a toxic fan of this Beyonce analog. I think there's what's her name, Naya, I believe is her name.
Naija.
And I
gotta grow up, Dre.
I like this show. I think it's really weird and it's really fun to watch. But when I hear that pitch that people have said, like, this is about toxic fandom and the perils of it, I just want to say it's not that deep, bro. Because I think what this show really is a slasher film about a crazy Beyonce fan, and I don't think it's deeper than that. And but that said, I really enjoy it.
Because you're exactly right, because every episode is amazing in that it's a 30-minute show, and they pack as much action and like show don't tell storytelling. And I watch 30 minutes of this show and I feel like 2 hours have transpired. Like that is just how distilled and intense it is. But that just speaks to the quality of it. It has this the box, aspect ratio, but it has just a wonderful, visual style just in general because it's about the culture. So everyone's dressed really wildly compared to what you normally see in Minot, North Dakota.
To meet her one day.
Maybe Minneapolis gets more high fashion. Yeah, it's a wonder to look at, from the set design to the kills themselves, which is why you should watch it. Because every single episode is just getting her into the orbit of somebody else, and then those people not taking seriously
spiritual.
The alarm bells that are probably going off in their head because they all just want to be good people. Because the lead the lead actress in this is it Fishbone?
Fishback.
Dominic Fishback. She was in The Deuce. I recognized her from that. She is so fucking weird and creepy in this, and every character knows it, but then they still will find a reason to not flee, and you wonder because that's what's great about it is that we don't know anything about this character's background beyond that moment when we first meet her, and and everything going forward. You can't trust anything that she says to anybody about herself.
To do her makeup
because she's a serial killer.
My hands would be shaking.
And she's being motivated by the I guess is this just her cracked mind thinking that her dead friend is texting her?
Knows what we're thinking and she gives it a name.
Or is there something else going on there?
Yeah, I think she's rationalizing it that way. I mean, I think clearly what she's doing is texting herself. It's almost like a split personality thing because she found her phone in the closet, and I think she's literally texting on that phone and then going to her phone and texting back that phone, but she's rationalizing it as her friend texting her from the grave or something.
Yeah, it's get revenge on everybody on Twitter who ever talks shit. Because I don't want to bring this up. What did you think of the disclaimer? Your quote unquote that runs before every episode.
This is feeling a little bit
saying that this is based on true events.
I always knew
or any similarity to actual events is intentional.
So
this is a true story. any similarity to actual events is intentional.
You gotta spare
What is
the
that supposed to
trunk.
mean? I've never seen anything like that
Damn,
before.
you got a dead body in there or something?
Yeah, I guess I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I would assume that what
Who
that
is your
intro is
favorite
referencing
artist?
is just, maybe not to this
have to meet
degree,
her
but
one day.
every single day
Promise me.
there are like thousands of girls
You
like
will.
this out there
I
that are
promise.
just like absolutely just nuts over like musicians or like actors and actresses
I
or
don't know, I
celebrities
kinda like her
or
sister better.
influencers.
She seems more like
And
spiritual.
they're just the Bayhive in real life is what it's called for Beyonce. And that group, that sort of group of online psychopaths, have been responsible for like some pretty heinous shit. And so I think it's probably referencing that.
I guess I was ignorant of that. Like, I'm not on Black people Twitter. Yeah, I used to be. And I'm just not on, I guess, beyond politics, I'm not in a toxic environment on the internet. But do they just, like, dox people and, like, harass them, basically drive them to suicide?
It's like, stuff like that. Like doxing people, like internet harassment campaigns, starting like
I got to do her
just like
makeup.
some crazy
wouldn't be
shit,
able to
finding
touch
where
her face. My
people
hands would be shaking
live
so
and, tweeting that out or finding where people work and trying to get them fired, stuff like
You still
that.
tweeting from that old
Yikes.
ass phone account?
Yikes. Yeah, toxic fandom, man. But
She's
yeah,
not
good
like
show.
everybody else.
Good show. And
I just couldn't make it all the way to the
She's a
end
goddess.
in one sitting because it is a lot to swallow. But yeah, goddamn, is it good?
I gotta grow up.
and I wanted to
I can't stay here.
just shout out before we move
Why are you
on.
doing this to me?
Just like, if anything, watch this show for like the amount of crazy people that are involved with it, because they're just strange people. Because you got
What do you
like,
think she's doing right now?
of course, it's sort of the brainchild of Donald Glover, but then you have like Michael
your
Jackson's
favorite artist?
daughter is in this, and Billie Eilish is in
You're a killer
this,
bee.
and.
Part of the
I don't know
swarm.
if you caught this, but
Talk about
when
Nigel.
one of the writers
You
who's
get stung.
credited for this show is somebody
Hey,
named
I'm not your friends. Those are
Malia,
some crazy ass
and
fans.
that's Malia Obama.
No shit!
Did you know that?
No!
Yeah,
Feeling a little bit
it's literally literally Malia Obama
You know, I
working
always
under
knew
like
you were
a
gonna be
pen name. I would assume she doesn't want people
she's
to
Well-
know it's her.
I guess that Harvey Weinstein internship really paid off.
You gotta spare in the
Yeah.
trunk.
No!
Good for her, though.
Damn,
Like, that's
you
cool.
got a dead
Which
body
episode
in there
did
or
she?
something?
She was a staff writer, so I don't know exactly.
Oh, I still, yeah. That's obfuscated.
Who is
Yeah, they're
your
I think they're
favorite
intentionally
artist?
saying that because I don't know if she, how much she really wrote or if she was
Have
just
to
in the
meet her
writer's
one
room and gave
Promise me.
ideas. But staff writer, I think that's like an intentionally vague
You
phrase.
will.
That's cool. Okay, like
promise.
it's strange that I'm having such a positive reaction to hearing that, but I guess it's just because I'm impressed, and
I don't know. I
It-
kind
it
of like
just-
her sister better.
just yeah, whatever.
She seems more
yeah,
like
however much she
more
was involved,
spiritual.
I'll take it. Moving on, just some quick hits, because this was on the dock at one point. It got taken off like a week or so ago when the new season premiered, but I kept on watching it, and I'm still waiting for this show to be, to hit the stride that it ended on. And I'm just not as interested in this mystery this time around. And I don't like where they have the characters either. It just is so weird to have everything just be broken up, unless I'm misremembering how that season ended. But there was just not a good place, like this new season, as far as like where, what's his name? Mason is at, and like his detective, like, I don't know. Things just, the vibe just wasn't there. And the mystery just isn't as interesting to me. It's maybe a little more topical, and it, gives, a chance to do like a civil rights story to a point. But like, it's just more, someone's messing around with the evidence locker and doing all kinds of weird shit. How high does this go? And I don't know. I'm just worried that it's just not going to be as good, and I'm not sure I'm going to keep watching. I'm kind of bored, I guess.
Yeah, same. I didn't put this on the doc, but I've also been watching it, and yeah, it seems a little slow, and yeah, everybody's kind of off in their own corner of the Mason verse or whatever you want to call it, and Yeah, it's just it hasn't hit its stride yet. The main mystery isn't that interesting of a sort of I don't know what you would call him, an entrepreneur that a dickhead entrepreneur that got killed. Like I don't give a shit about that guy, and so
yeah, he's just like a Bitcoin, fuckboy hustler of his day, just like having shell companies for his failing boat casino.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's not working quite as well as the first season did. I want to know what the hell they're doing with Sean Astin's like awful like grocery store like owner character that's just a complete piece of shit. Like what are they doing with that character? I have no idea.
And that's what I mean, because like the whole point of like this weird reset that they did off screen was Mason not wanting to do court like crime stuff anymore. He didn't want to do investigative work. He didn't want to defend people. It's stressful. It's hard. So he did what a lot of lawyers do, and he's like, yeah, I'll go into civil. So yeah, guess what? Civil law work is boring. It's really lame. It's a lot of just what that like. It's like that whole sequence where she's at the Hall of Records and just like looking at one address in one file, writing it down, closing it in another. It's just like, why are we watching that? Like, why is that what this show is about? Yeah, it's too bad. What I'm more interested to hear about, Matt, it's on the same topic, but we got a documentary series about, the hatchet man of Hollywood, Anthony Pellicano, and this is coming to us from the New York Times. I know that they did documentaries, so is this good, or is this, kind of middle of the road?
Hollywood in the 90s was about power.
It's decent.
That's where
I enjoy this series.
This guy's getting
it's a
hired
Hulu
by
series
rich people,
called New York
powerful
Times
people to
Presents,
solve
and
high-level
they do
problems.
like
Michael
hour-long
Jackson,
documentaries
Howard
about a
Weitzman.
variety of
You're not gonna get no
subjects. I mean,
political
they've done ones
Just
about
stick with me,
Britney
baby. I'll
Spears.
take
They've
care
done
of it.
ones about
He would
vapes,
acquire
like the
information
vape industry.
ruthlessly.
They've
There were
done ones
rumors
about
that
that
Pellicano had been
teenager
wiretapping
that
people.
hacked Twitter in
Pellicano had a number
2020,
of sources
and
within
so
the
now they're
telephone
taking
company to
on
implement an illegal
Anthony
wiretap.
Pellicano,
He
who
had a
was
room
sort
that
of
was dubbed the
a
War
just
Room,
like the
which was
most
filled with computers.
stereotypical
A
like
lot of his clients really
Italian
bought
like
into that because
mob
he seemed like the PI
fixer
you'd
for
hire from
90s
TV.
Hollywood.
He
Like
recorded
he
all of
was
his
the
phone
guy
conversations.
who would actually
This film
go,
is the first time a lot of
like
these
threaten
recordings are
people's
going to be
lives
You
or
come to me,
tap
that's
their
the end of
phones
that.
and
I'm
do all
very
this shit that you
heavy-handed,
see
honey.
on like The Sopranos.
Anthony
And the
Pellicano
guy
is gonna
obviously
go down.
thinks he
The
is
question
in The
is,
Sopranos
who else
because
is gonna
he's
go
an
down with him?
absolute douche canoe. Like they get him to sit down for an interview in this, and he's constantly spouting like, I'm a Sicilian and I live by a code and like stuff like that. And it's all bullshit. And yeah, but it's fun to watch. And yeah, I guess I would call this like, this is
Hollywood
a good
in the
thing to
90s
watch
was
while you're
about
like
power.
folding
That's where
laundry,
Anthony
like that
Pellicano
type of
enters
thing,
the
you know?
picture.
It's like,
This guy's getting
this is a good
hired
thing to
by
watch
rich
while you're
people,
cleaning the
powerful
house or
people to
folding
solve
laundry.
high-level
It's
problems.
entertaining
Michael
enough.
Jackson, Burt Fields, Howard Weitzman.
Especially if you don't
You're
know
not
the
gonna get no
story,
political
which
shit. It ain't gonna happen.
I wasn't
Just stick
100%
with me,
caught
baby. I'll
up
take
on,
care
but
of it.
essentially,
He would acquire information
he was the
ruthlessly.
sin
There were
eater for
rumors
Hollywood in the
that
90s,
Pellicano
where
had
he
been
would
wiretapping people.
cover up
Pellicano had a number of
celebrities'
sources within the telephone company to implement
misdeeds,
an illegal
and
wiretap.
he taped everything.
had a
That's
room
the
that was
really
dubbed the War Room,
amazing
which
thing.
was
And so
filled
you
with
have all
computers.
these hundreds
A
of
lot of his
hours of
clients really
tapes
bought
of
into that because he seemed like the
celebrities,
PI you'd
or
hire from
if they were
TV.
smart,
He recorded all
celebrities'
of his phone
lawyers
conversations.
talking to
This
him
film is the
on the
first time a lot of
phone.
these recordings are going
And
to be
it's
heard.
just, pretty
You come to me,
fascinating the
that's the
people
end of
that
that.
he
I'm
have
very
employed
heavy-handed, honey.
this essentially
Anthony Pellicano is gonna go
mobster.
down. The question is,
and,
who else is going to go down with him?
one of the really interesting ones are the Chris Rock. I mean, this is very timely now because he's back in the news, but Chris Rock employed Anthony Pellicano to cover up him cheating on his wife. And so you have all these phone conversations between Chris Rock and Pellicano where Pellicano's
Hollywood in the
basically
90s
like,
was about power.
you know, he's
That's
talking about
where
illegal
Anthony
shit on the
Pellicano
phone, and
enters the
Chris
picture.
Rock is like,
This
yeah,
guy's
yeah,
getting
do
hired by
that,
rich
let's do
people,
it.
powerful
And
people
so
to
very,
solve
yeah, very
high-level
interesting. And
problems.
Michael Jackson, Burt Fields,
yeah,
Howard
watch it. I
Weitzman.
would say watch it.
Now I'm gonna check that out
Just
because
stick with me,
I
baby.
had
I'll take care of it.
been researching
He would
like
acquire
the
information
like sin
ruthlessly.
eaters,
There were
as like
rumors that
I forget
Pellicano
exactly
was
what they
wiretapping
were, but there was like
Pellicano
a
had
religious
number of
thing
sources within the
where
telephone
like
company to
someone would
implement
eat a
an
meal
illegal wiretap.
for you. You know,
He
to
had
like
a room
eat your
that was
sins
dubbed
before
the
like
War
you
Room,
died or
which was
something
filled
like
with
that. Maybe I'm
computers.
remembering it
A
wrong.
lot of his clients
My
really
frame
bought
of
into
reference
that
for
because he seemed
Pellicano
like the PI
was
you'd
the
hire
fact
from
that
TV.
the work he
recorded
did
all
for
of his
John
phone
McTiernan is what
conversations.
got John
This film is the first
McTiernan
time
put
a
in
lot of these
jail.
recordings are going to be
If
heard.
you, yeah,
You
I
come
don't,
to
do they
me,
talk about
that's
that
the
at
end
all?
of that. I'm very heavy.
They don't. No, they don't talk about
Anthony Pellicano is
McTiernan.
going to go down.
They,
the question is,
they mostly
who else is gonna
focus
go down with
on the Michael Jackson stuff. He worked on the Michael Jackson sex abuse stuff. He also worked on the Steven Seagal, who threatened the life of a producer, who had Anthony Pellicano threaten the life of a producer. So they focus on that. I mean, there's too many people for this
Hollywood
guy
in
has
the
worked with
90s
so
was
many
about
celebrities,
power,
and
that's where
that's kind of
Anthony
the
Pellicano
amazing
enters the
thing
picture.
as you watch
This
this,
guy's
just
getting
realizing
hired
sort
by
of
rich
the
people,
breadth of
powerful
his
people
work.
to solve high-level problems.
Michael Jackson,
I'm definitely going to check that
Fields,
out.
Howard Weitzman.
You're not
Especially
going to get
since
no
I
political
have
career.
my
It ain't gonna happen.
magic
Just stick with
Hulu
me, baby.
subscription again. My last little,
And then also,
sorry.
Before we move on, I wanted to say, now that he's out of jail, because he did go to jail for about 10 years, he is working, of course, in sort of true Anthony Pellicano fashion. He has now gotten a job as essentially working on Me Too cases for Joel Silver, for film producer Joel Silver. So Pellicano essentially settles Me Too cases out of court now on behalf of Joel Silver.
Wow, what a great because what the fuck? You don't hear about Joel Silver anymore, do you?
Not really.
Not
no.
really. Like ever since the first, the original Matrix trilogy ended and the Wachowskis stopped making movies with him, he stopped having anything. But that's really fucked up. That's really fucked up. I prepped myself for seeing the main event today by seeing the original. And this original movie, Shazam, I'm not sad I missed out on it, but it at least gives the comic book superhero space some genuine wholesomeness while also still trying to take seriously the comic book material, as much as it is. And I really, enjoyed how the ending really set the stage for what was going to be happening in the second movie, and the fact that they did that with getting the whole family on screen at the end of that movie. But it was a positive experience. I really want to know what the fuck Mr. Mind is going to be doing, and what they had planned for him, because I forgot that he showed up in the after credit sequence. But kind of like with those first two Ant-Man movies, I prefer this original to what I ended up, I guess I forget what I actually thought about Ant-Man. They're all middling. But as far as this goes, this original Shazam movie, I would say, is legitimately good and, worthwhile, as far as the canon is concerned. Shazam 2, whatever you call it, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, whatever you want to call this piece of shit. It's a kind of a sorry, sad little movie. It seems like it was really slapped together. I don't know why. But none of the dialogue works. None of the action sequences work. The way that this movie is shot confounded me from frame up. It's just so awkward. The camera is looking at things that make no sense half the time. And especially when I'm sitting here thinking this is supposed to be competing with even the most basic and lame Marvel movies. And I was like, this is not even as good as the Arrowverse on the CW. The effects in this I found really shit, and overall the whole narrative of the movie was just lame. I didn't like this. I'm just being really toxically negative because this is exactly why I stopped going to movies for a long time. It's because they were just pooping shit out like this. Don't get me wrong, at its core there is something here that is good, and there are moments that are pretty rad, but there's just something about this that doesn't hold up, and it's very disappointing when you think about what this is supposed to be doing. This is supposed to be inhabiting the same space as, the Gunverse, and I just don't see that happening. I don't think they acquitted themselves. They tried to smash it in there. They have that really weird, cameo from, Wonder Woman at one point, just to Deus Ex Machina, the main character out of the grave. But I just wasn't impressed, and I thought I maybe would be. So that's where I'm at with this movie.
Yeah, I would say I mostly agree with you. I think I might be a little bit warmer on the movie than you.
I am being really negative.
Like I said, kind of in my intro, at the beginning of the episode, I think it's definitely stuck in like the 2000s, as far as the structure, the villains, the plotting. It's all very, very like 2000s X-Men movie to me. But I find the premise of the Shazam family to be sort of a inherently interesting premise, having this family that they're all superheroes, and sort of in lieu of a Fantastic Four movie. I think this is very, it's a inherently interesting premise. And that's, I think, when the movie works the best, when you kind of get the younger and the older characters, and when those two characters actually line up. Because one thing I'll tell you is that, so you can tell some of these older versions of the actors and younger version of the actors actually probably got together and like workshopped the character so that the characters would actually be the same. And then some of them were just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And we'll touch a little bit more on that later. But yeah, it's just so generic and so like old school superhero movie in not a good way.
Yeah, and that's exactly the vibe. Like, this has more in common with Fantastic Four and like Rise of the Silver Surfer. Like,
yes.
This is the way that the characters talk and like interact with each other sometimes. It just I don't know. Like, and God, the chick that's playing Snow White, in that new Snow White movie, who's in this, who's like the youngest,
Rachel Ziegler.
Rachel Ziegler, like she was in a totally different movie from everybody else. You know what? I don't know. It just seemed like, like everyone was doing their own thing, and they didn't have a director to like go get everybody on the same page when they were, in front of the camera, because it gets jarring after a while, because the way that some lines are written and delivered, you would think you were watching Nickelodeon. And you know what? Maybe I just need to, maybe that's my problem, because like the problem is with me. Because this is a superhero show for, this is a show for kids. So I just need to get over that. Because this is what they can handle. These are the things they're thinking about. And they don't want to have weighty themes beyond, oh my God, I am, I don't feel secure in my family. Am I really loved? Am I just, a dollar figure? Whatever. Like there's something there to explore. Even like the brother with with the disability. That, was interesting. So I have to give them credit, but at the same time, they should have done better than this.
Yeah, they really sort of dropped the ball with a lot of those side characters where, the brother with the disability, it's like, why don't you explore that more? The fact that he has the disability when he is younger, but then he doesn't when he turns into his superhero self, or like the fat kid. It's like, he's fat when he's younger, but when he turns into his superhero self, he's buff. It's like, why didn't you explore that? Why did you just like throw in a token like gay subplot with him in the 11th hour? Like, why don't you explore the fact that, he wants to maybe stay in his superhero self more because he doesn't like transforming into his younger self or something like that. I don't know. There are a lot of missed opportunities, and I guess I'll kind of speak on. I wanted to give a shout out to the two members of the Shazamily that I thought were good. Megan Good, and then the younger version of herself, did a very, very good job of portraying that character as one person, because they felt like the same person, but just in an older and younger body. And then also Adam Brody, and the Adam Brody is fucking incredible, and he doesn't get enough screen time in this, but also the younger version of himself. Those two guys, they clearly got together and said, here's how we're going to portray this character, and here's how we're going to make it the same person, and it works. And then everybody else, especially Zachary Levi, sucks, because Zachary Levi is a completely different character when he turns into Shazam. He loses like 20 IQ points, and he's suddenly like amazed at everything he's doing. You know, he's in constant amazement at his powers. He's like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And it's just a completely different character than, I believe the actor's name is Asher Angel, the younger version, where he's like, so like, not depressed, but he's, you know, he's sad, and he's wallowing in his sort of, his age debacle and stuff. And it's just, it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's too much dissonance, you know, between the two when they should be the same person on the inside. You know, that's kind of the whole point. But it just, you know, makes me think about what could be done with this character, Shazam, and the Shazamily. Did you ever read Alan Moore's pitch document for Twilight of the Supermen?
No.
Oh, good God. It's amazing. Just, like, I'll send it your way so you can read it. But I'll spoil, you know, it, you know, to enough to point out that, like, the major, like, plot point of it, you know, involves that very issue about Shazam being, you know, an adult, you know, body form, and then there being a little, it's I guess it's the same thing as with a Miracle Man and Miracle Boy, you know, like, where it's like where you have, like, what is supposed to be a young person kind of going crazy and, like, you know, and disassociating because they, you know, don't know which of them is the real them, or, you know what I mean? Like, where, like, they transform it's that kind of thing. So maybe that's just what I'm thirsting for, is actually a Miracle Man adaptation. So I should just, you know, just let Shazam be for the kids. That's too much to wish for in this life.
Well, even like Jeff Johns finished a run on the Shazam comic about 2 or so years ago. He did like I think about a 20-issue run on Shazam. And it's like, why didn't you adapt that? Because it's in his version of Shazam, it's so much more interesting, and they kind of hint at it in this movie, where, you know, that room that they go into that has all the doors that go to different lands?
Yeah.
Like it has just the random, like, doors, and when you go through them, they go somewhere else. And in the Jeff Johns comic series that he did, that's what the comic is about. It's about them, the Shazam family, exploring those different lands, and there's just all different types, and they're all very unique. And, you know, this should have been like a fantasy movie like that, but what it is it's just a really generic, like, superhero, like, comedy, because also in the comics, Shazam isn't like this wisecracking, like, idiot. He's more akin to Superman. He's kind of a more green around his gills Superman, essentially, in the comics, and they didn't get the character right at all. Yeah,
the wide-eyed babe in the woods routine is endearing in the first movie, but it makes no sense in this one. By now, there should be something transformative happening internally, and instead they focused on topics that were less weighty, for the sake of their audience, but they left this audience, you know, hanging, because that's what we're looking for. Like, we know what is possible with these characters, and they could have, you know, explored some of this stuff to some degree without going full Alan Moore on it. But, you know, you got to try a little harder than this. You got to have the stakes be more than, oh no, the bad guys have planted a thing, and there's the whole city's trapped behind a dome. Like, you give us something more. Please. It's like, we know what you can do, and we know what you aren't doing. And yeah, this was unless you're taking the family out for a matinee, this is probably one to miss. And just wait till they poop it out on streaming, you know, years after the fact, which is, you know, how long it took me to see the original one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really, with these superhero films, I really start to check out now when I see the stuff we've seen a million times before, like, you know, giant blue beams shooting up into the sky, or like superheroes doing like Kamehameha blasts that collide with each other in midair, or the stupid, like, I really hate the, like, zombified humans that the villains created towards the beginning of the movie, where they take the staff and they press it against them, and then suddenly the people get like these weird, like almost like corpse paint black streaks around their eyes, and they become like a zombified version of themselves.
Yeah.
We saw that in literally 2012's first Avengers movie, when Loki would touch people with the staff and then they would go all evil. And so it's like, why are you still doing this shit?
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, it's there's so much more. Yeah. And this just feel like movies of that era. Like you can tell that the people who made this aren't reading comics. Like they don't know how behind the curve they are for some reason.
What about what do you make of the villains? I mean, you already commented a little bit on Rachel Ziegler, but do you have anything to say about Helen Mirren or Lucy Liu at all?
They are the worst villains in superhero movie history. Like, there is no debate. Like, they are non-villains. They aren't menacing. I didn't understand what their motivations were. I didn't even really understand who they were supposed to be, even though they're supposed to be Greek gods. But it just made the Eternals made more sense. Like the villain wise than this. Like it was scarier than what they were. I don't know. They were trying to be Loki, but they weren't Loki at all, because nobody in this world actually acted like they were as menacing as like the movie was trying to make them seem. I don't know. Like they were undermining their own characters in their own movie throughout it, just because nothing was quite framed or written or done effectively. Everything just kind of feels half-assed. They did this Eastwood style and did one take for like every single line delivery, because what was more important was trying to figure out how they were going to remap the new CG shit that they were piping in. Like, oh no, we have to get the Wonder Woman cameo in this. How are we going to do that? I did laugh during the dream sequence where Jaimon Hansu's face winds up on Wonder Woman's body. That was kind of funny. And that was funny. And he's trying so hard, and I want to shout him out, because apparently the man is constantly being stiffed by Hollywood, despite him being their go-to guy at no matter what point in his career, whether it was in the 90s in Stargate. They're basically using him the same. So I understand where his concern is coming from, because not only are the roles no good that he's getting, but they're paying him shit. Because like he's basically saying like, I make no money. I've made no money in my career. He's basically a pauper in terms of big name actors who are in multi-million-dollar movies. And I hope that they start doing better by him. But this kind of felt like he was walking away. At the end of this movie, is he's done. He's done with this whole shindig. It's just not worth it to him anymore.
For sure, yeah. I guess to go back to the villains, the thing that I loved about Helen Mirren's entire presence in this movie is she's such like a geriatric that any scene in which she isn't doing anything but just standing there, it's shot from strictly the neck down.
And that's what I mean.
Every scene.
Yeah, like when they first introduce her and Lucy Liu, and they're wearing those ridiculous outfits, and they're just like standing in front of. Yeah, it's when they're. This is exactly like what I was kind of referring to. That one dude who's in Peacemaker is like giving like I'm the museum guide talking about the staff, thing. And then they just like, but they don't shoot who he is talking to. They either just cut to shots of him or like the feet of the people walking, and you don't see the kids that are supposed to be in front of him until the shot where they smash the glass or like start banging on it. And then there's magically a kid in front of one of them. It just sloppy. Yeah. Cause it
very, very,
but at the same time, when she's grabbing people and like smashing them into things, with like her arm, it just looks so fake and unnatural. I don't know how you do that well. So I don't want to beat them up too much, but it just looks silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I mean it's completely miscast. I mean, at the end of the day, just. They got Helen Mirren to play this character because they could get Helen Mirren. There's no other reason. There was no other thought put into it. And just not a good casting decision there. And I guess to kind of, I don't know if if you had anything you wanted to say positive about the movie, but I guess to say something that I sort of liked. When this movie was more just superheroes having fist fights, I enjoy those like action scenes a lot more than I do the just completely overblown CGI set pieces towards the end. Like, there's a reason why I think, say what you will about Man of Steel, but the fist fights that Zod and Superman have in that are pretty cool. And I sort of felt glimmers of that in this when Shazam and Helen Mirren were like fighting in like that underground, like I don't know what it was, like a storage area under the cheesesteak place where they were just punching each other into walls and ceilings. And then he did that thing where she was making like that ball out of concrete, and then he like swapped places with her so that it would hit her instead. I thought that was pretty decent,
because that is their powers. Like during that opening, like bridged, like the bridge disaster sequence is kind of ridiculous on its face, but it at the same time, it worked, because like when the little girl, she'll save the kittens first because she knows she has enough time to make sure that they're okay, before she saves everybody else in the car. But at the same that said, I don't know, like every time I wanted to like it, I just found myself nitpicking it. So I guess, like I will say positively that I will probably watch this again, within a specific context, with, my kids someday. But if I could have not seen this, I would have rather waited. I paid money for this. You know what I mean? Like that. But that's kind of the other question here. How well attended? Like my theater was pretty sparse.
Yeah, I guess from what I heard, it only did about 3 million for like Thursday night like preview showings, which is pretty bad. And I think it's headed for like a $30 million weekend, which again is pretty bad for a movie like this. So my theater had, I think, maybe like about 10 other people, I would say, in it.
But what about these mid-credit, end-credit sequences? What did you make of those?
Yeah, I wanted to another conversation that's tied into that is I want to know if you think that they did any sort of work on this movie to make it potentially tie into James Gunn's universe more. Like if you think they reshot stuff or they changed anything in the script. And the after credit scenes, I think, are pretty obviously, tailored to that, in that direction. But is there anything else you think of?
I think that might be why they made it so quippy, because they really want this to, he's kind of the Spider-Man of the DCU in that respect, because he's a child compared to the adults in the room, even though he's about to turn 18 in the story. But I think maybe that's why it's so janky, is for like some of those subtle reasons, because they were like, well, we might have this character in the same, in the same scene as like Peacemaker or like any of those characters from Suicide Squad, which we obviously will, because he's going to be, they're forming the Justice Society of America.
Well, so, they're not forming it. They're expanding on it, because the Justice Society was, if they keep Black Adam in the mix, Justice Society was in Black Adam.
That's right. Okay, I forgot about that movie.
Yeah. So what we're going to see is potentially, I guess, a Justice Society of America with Shazam, Atom Smasher, Calypso. I guess Dr. Fate's dead, but we'll probably see the next Dr. Fate.
Is Aldous Hodge going to come back?
Oh yeah, Hawkman. Yeah. Hawkman's in the JSA in the comics, so yes, we'll see him too. Yep.
Cool. So, are we gonna have metal? Tommy. Hat wearing Flash. Are we gonna have old school Flash and old school Green Lantern too?
I hope. Yeah. Jay Garrick and Alan Scott. Yeah, that would be amazing, because they are kind of an integral part of that. And so, Yeah, that would be awesome. And Stargirl too. I mean, they have a Stargirl TV show. They could bring in the girl from the TV show.
That's what I mean. They literally just need to be like, oh, the Flash happened. Now everybody's in continuity. Yay! That's what they need to do. But I think that there's too much pride from some of these people because we probably should have had a news item about this, but apparently the man behind the Arrowverse feels very left out in the cold. He wasn't brought on board in any capacity, and he feels like the decade he spent on the CW was time wasted. But is it maybe appropriate that he's being, kept out of the party?
I think so. This was always going to be the case. I have never, I think I'm on the record as saying I have never watched any of those superhero TV shows because, in my opinion, they never connect to the movies, and I don't think they ever had any intention to connect to the movies. It just seems like the B version of whatever the A version is of these movie universes, and I've never been interested in any of those. Even like the so-called more higher quality ones on like HBO Max, like Titans and Doom Patrol. I have never been interested in those because they're never going to do anything with that shit.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing come to fruition now.
I may watch Doom Patrol unless they take it off the air at some point. I've been meaning to. It's like the lone Grant Morrison adaptation that we have. But yeah, that was just an interesting little digression because this is all relevant. Are we going to... So we are definitely going to see more of these characters in Gunn's expanded universe. I just hope they take a more careful hand with it. And, and Gunn says, okay, you can't just do whatever the fuck you're trying to do. We need to make this work. Because this does not hold up. If you're trying to bat 300, forget Tarantino's 1,000, or 900, you gotta... You got to try a little harder. But that said, we'd probably recommend this, right? As much as I slagged it, I would still recommend it.
I would say this is an HBO Max watch. Don't go spend money on it in the theater. Watch it when it appears on HBO Max in 3 months. And that's kind of what my suggestion would be. And then also, real quick, just to touch on that final credits scene.
The final.
I think they were clearly... You stayed for that, right? The very end one? I think what they were clearly doing there was hand-waving away the Mr. Mind stuff. Because if people will remember, as Chuck already stated earlier in the podcast, Mr. Mind was like the setup villain after the first Shazam movie. And then I think what they were doing with this after credit scene was basically just saying, no, we're not doing any of that. And because, they were making a joke out of it. They were basically like, I need to go off and do other stuff. And so I think they're just hand waving all that stuff away.
That pisses me. It pisses me off so much because, why are we watching these really lame, throwaway, unmemorable, Greek god villains when you could have something gonzo like that? Mark Strong's performance from the first movie was one of the highlights. I enjoyed that. And I don't know too many other Shazam villains, but it's like, come on. Did James Gunn basically say, no, you can't? But he didn't have the power to do that when they were making this movie. So
no, I don't think so. Yeah.
So they very consciously were like, well, we can't make Helen Mirren be Mr. Mind. You know what I mean? So I think that's why that happened. They wanted to cast Helen Mirren. They wanted Lucy Liu. They wanted a diverse cast, and they wanted to have the villains be women who are not past their prime, but who maybe shouldn't be playing villains in a superhero movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I guess final word, just, watch it on HBO Max. And this, especially if this doesn't pan out to have any sort of impact on the James Gunn stuff, I will say that I think Flash and Aquaman are going to have a more direct correlation to James Gunn stuff. I think they just wanted to get out the door. That's it.
This They had this, and they just because they could have just shit canned this. You know what I mean? But for some reason, they felt compelled to because they moved this around. This was supposed to come out like last year, right?
Yeah.
Moving on to the Mentionables, I installed this without realizing what came along with it because, like this is Dead Cells for your Mentionable, but it's the Return to Castlevania expansion.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, this is Dead Cells is a roguelike game, if people don't know, that is very heavily inspired by the old Castlevania games, especially Symphony of the Night. And they actually convinced Konami to let them do a Castlevania themed expansion to the base game. And so what you have here is the character that you play as going into the world of Castlevania, where you're fighting the monsters from Castlevania. You're going through the castle. You're eventually working your way up to Dracula, and you're getting all the weapons from the Castlevania games, and it's awesome. And the music, oh my god, the music is incredible. It's all stuff from the Castlevania games, and this is a 10 out of 10 expansion. I believe it's $10, totally worth it. And they've worked it well into the main game where it flows nicely. If you play this, it melds in with the levels of the main game. So yeah, very, very fun.
Cool. Right on. This, because I recently purchased a Steam Deck, and I did it the morning that they announced that they were going to be 10%ing off the whole, like all the models. So if you want to get one, you can get one for less than $400 right now. You know, the most basic of the base models. But when I tried to like say, hey, you put this shit on sale like 2 hours after I bought this, can I get a discount? Instead, they were just like, no, we'll give you Steam credit instead. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I have money I have to spend in the Steam store just in time for the sale. And I'm probably just going to buy this because I am not ambitious enough to actually figure out the Linux to get like a Game Pass to work on it yet. Because that's the only other. So I'm probably just going to buy this because it looks so damn cool and it would be perfect for that little device. Thanks for pointing it out to me that there was more to it than just. I just downloaded it because I was like, oh, this looks interesting. I installed it. Now I know I have even more reason to check it out. Haven't had a chance to play. What I have been doing, though, is listening to the audiobook for Horus Rising, book 1 in the Horus Heresy. You know, Dan Abnett, kicked that whole thing off. I mentioned the Siege of Terra book that came out a few weeks ago. But I just want to point out that the end of that book involves a character who is the main narrator of this one. You know, like the first voice of the Horus Heresy is a character named Garviel Loken. And the first line that introduces him is him saying, "I was there when Horus Lupercal killed the Emperor." And wouldn't you know it, the end of the conclusion of the End of the Death Part 1 is Garviel Loken. Basically, he's been beneath the palace on Terra while the warp is moving everything around underneath the surface. So he's winding up in all these places that make no sense. And suddenly he finds himself on Horus's battle barge in space, you know, where the Emperor and all the other Primarchs are at. They're getting ready for the final showdown. So they're basically, I'm just realizing, you know, now that I have the context of this book, everything that was happening in the latest one. So basically that setup is pretty awesome, because when I was reading that book, I was like, how is Garviel Loken going to be involved with anything that matters? Because he's like literally just having a vision quest in the bowels of Earth. But now I know, and it's because of this book. It's well written, worth checking out. It's the place that people are recommended to start with Warhammer 40K in particular. And just really, really awesome writing about really angry dudes who are way too buff and who have daddy issues. So there's a lot to love. What was your pick of the week?
You know, I would probably say Swarm, at least of what I've watched of it so far.
I echo that. That's mine as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just so weird and you know, it's very surprising for Amazon show especially, because Amazon, they don't take a whole lot of chances, and so just a artifact of a show, I guess.
Yeah, it impressed. Like, I haven't been impressed in this way since was it called Homecoming, that Julia Roberts show? Yeah, another boxy aspect ratio on Amazon Prime. So I think maybe that's just the sign of quality on that channel. You know that people are actually trying when it looks like that. But that is From the Mezzanine. The last time you will hear us sign off under that name. And probably check out Shazam, Fury of the Gods on HBO. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Matt, once again. And have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.